Well, and so here again, your friendly local constitutional creep from San Francisco. Now, follow up to the video I just did on abortion. This one applies in particular, though, across the board. It doesn't matter what you're involved in. Traffic court, child procurement syndicate, things like that, mortgage cases. It doesn't matter. All of it, criminal, quote unquote. Um, and that is, there's a lot of issues that come into play here. With regard to the extent of the power of the legislature, especially in my former hometown of Washington, D.C. Um, and what you're going to find out is you start asking the real questions here. And even if these governments would have the power they claim to have, I mean, Washington, D.C. is probably about 2 or 3% of what they think they have because of that original intent of those racist framers. And the fact we're supposed to have sovereign, independent states admitted into this union, which we don't have now. That's why Washington, D.C. thinks they can do everything. As you get into the boardroom at the New York bankers in New York, which we probably can't do, and you go in there and look at their map of the United States, probably doesn't have any state lines. And they don't think they need any. That's how bad it is. But you start making some real arguments there, and you'll learn those. Send me an email, yourunningcourt@gmail.com, and you don't go in there and argue violation of due process. 14th Amendment doesn't exist, never did. You should want nothing to do with it. Among other things, what you do go in there and do is say, wait a minute, if Congress does have that power, the original Congress might have, but we still don't think so in many cases. But today, they have problems up the wazoo, especially Article 1, Section 2, that provides that, all the members of Congress to be qualified have to be inhabitants of the state they represent. And what you'll learn with my materials is there are no states remaining which were admitted into this union. That's the ratification of the non-existent 14th War Amendment. I've got a hell of a brief on that issue alone. Ratification of that amendment violated all 6 articles of the Constitution, a gruesome grand slam of violations. And that's what you'll learn. Send me an email, youwinningcourt@gmail.com. The net effect today is, and for the last 140 years, very arguably, we have 0 qualified members in the House or the Senate. There's nobody home. And the way they act these days with all these debates and statements and civil rights crap, they're acting exactly like they do know nothing, which is at least truth in advertising. So we have that to deal with. And then we have the ratio of representation, Article 1, Section 3, maximum ratio, 30,000 inhabitants to 1 representative in the House of Representatives. And wouldn't you know, with 325 million people today, how many do we need? Noting the fact that Congress has been limited to 435, courtesy of the Reapportionment Act of 1929. We'll learn all about that. But we should have 435, but we should have, you ready for this? 11,500. And it's more than mere numbers. Puts the two-party system out of business, exactly where it belongs. So even if they had that kind of power in Washington, and they don't, it wouldn't help for those reasons alone. And then you go into the fact with the Senate, and those of you that don't originally know, the original intent, said that, the senators were appointed by the legislatures of sovereign independent states admitted into this union. Since the creation of the non-existent 17th Amendment, senators are now elected by the people, quote unquote, and that can't happen either. What they've done, if the sovereign independent states still exist, have taken them completely out of the picture. There's nothing remotely resembling a federated republican government of defined and limited powers. Even if they could enact things, they can't do it under these circumstances. The states are gone and have been for quite a while. So to learn more about all these issues, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. And you'll also find out that the states themselves don't have any Republican form of government guaranteed by Article 4, Section 4. For those of you who don't know, how many times has the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on that issue in 230 years? Once. Goes back to Luther Reed Borden in 1852, and the court called it a political question at that time. And it might have been. I'll give them credit. In that era, it might have been. It sure as hell won't be when we get there. Because we take the position, not only do we have no Republican form of government in the states, we have what they would readily recognize in North Korea as not only a democracy, three wolves and two sheep voting on what's for dinner. We have an elective despotism. That's all there is. You go to vote and you have your say, and that's the end of it. But the problem with that is, that this system, again, courtesy of that 14th War Amendment, you know, assumes all of their citizens are ignorant or incompetent. And you read Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, what does it say? All persons, should be capital letters, born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. Not how it works. We don't have a residence anywhere. We're domiciled in a state judicial district. They can't even do effective service process on you. And you'll learn more about that one too. Send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. And it just goes on and it gets a lot better. Because what they didn't tell anybody who ratified the amendment, quote unquote, and none of them had the power to do it, by the way, you'll learn about that too, was that what they really did was created, in effect, new states, and they also created subordinate corporate citizenship. Nobody knew it, even if they had the ability to ratify the amendment. That's null and void, non pro tunc ab initio for at least those reasons. And that's all they have. The 14th War Amendment. The sooner we get rid of that, the better off we're all going to be, including your family, your children, and your posterity. And the justices on the court know this right now. First time in 90 years it started to act like a judicial court. Now we get issues in there like that and get rulings on these kind of issues, that puts all of these bastards out of business unless or until, they come into, full cooperation with the original intent of the framers and that federated republican form of government of defined and limited powers. And you can learn how to get all of that done. Send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. Now, that's how good it is, and really for everybody when you think about it. Doesn't matter whether you're a pro-Trump Republican or a pro-civil rights Democrat. All of us should want the same thing, to get back to local government, which is far less expensive, far more efficient, and much more readily controlled, because we have the right to meet with and consult and instruct our representatives, especially on the county level where most of the power is. That's how it gets done correctly. It may still not be perfect, and hasn't been a perfect government ever created yet. Ours, the one we did have, is the best one ever. We want it back. Nothing hard about it. And you can learn more about that. Send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. And it's just astounding. And, it may not come to you at first. Don't be worried about that. It took me close to 20 years before I finally got the full perspective. And I sat down one day and I said, it can't be right. But everything was there. And I want to teach you how to do the same thing in a hell of a lot less than 20 years. It's not that hard when you understand that perspective. No civil rights, no 14th Amendment, but what we should have in place takes care of just about everything from a governmental point of view and does it much better and less expensive. Wow, the whole thing is just, it's astounding when you think about it. And that's where we want to get back to. And go back to that original government. We can make changes from there and do it right this time. That's the big deal here. So, and that for me is, it's what I do. And here I just turned 75 recently, and things are so good. My life is still ahead of me. How is that I mean, that's astounding. And I've been thankful, by the way, for the great health I have every day. I send my thank yous to the man upstairs, sir, who must have a lot to do with that. And it keeps me going and out there so that I can help you, your family, and your posterity. So it's all good. Learn more, send me an email, uwinnincourt@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe, like the videos, tell your friends, get the word out. Thank you.